सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति।
So, today what we are going to see is, in the next two verses, if one actually listens to Vedanta for a length of time, along with meditation practices where you actually reflect, you give yourself time to reflect on the teaching, and also to take care of your habitual orientations, right? It is not going to go away automatically. And if you do that, what is the person like? What is the disposition of this person who has listened to this knowledge and also worked on oneself? So that is described in the next two verses, which I think are very, very nice verses. Here it says, okay, Prashantatma vikatavrihi brahmachari pratesthitaha manasanyamya manchittaha yukta asita matvaraha. Okay. So, here he says, the first outcome of this person is certain disposition of that person. Okay? And what is very nice is Prashantatma. Prashantatma means the person is naturally cheerful, naturally composed. Okay? Now that is something which is a very nice description of a spiritual person, because normally spiritual person is portrayed as somebody who is disenchanted with the world and is not interested in material world, and has no desires, is detached from the world. Here the description of that person is totally different. Here it says Prashantatma, means a cheerful, naturally cheerful person. Okay? So spirituality gives you the skills of living life intelligently and not carrying all the burdens that we generally carry, right? When you give up your burdens, what happens is you are naturally more dynamic, you are naturally more enthusiastic, you are naturally more cheerful, you are just person who has taken off what is this load which is within oneself. Okay? So one of the ladies that we gave classes, we first started teaching in Bangkok, and she literally used that analogy, and she says, listening to Vedanta and kind of imbibing Vedanta in your life, it is like taking off loads, kilos of loads within me and just letting it go. Life has become so much lighter. Okay? So that is something, this is what it is meant to do for you. And this is why, in fact, I kind of can correlate to what Roshni was just talking about before the class, that, cancer, a lot of these diseases are psychosomatic. Okay? Psychosomatic means not when it's a small child, but when it is an adult, a lot of it is our own interpretation and the heaviness that we carry.
Even a small child comes with it.
Yes, exactly.
We bring it
from our previous. Yes, exactly. So I didn't want to absolutely. We come with it and we carry the passport. But I didn't want to exactly. It's true. Okay. But in general, you don't want to enter into that. But like it's true. A lot of people, in fact, cancer is a lot to do with your own kind of mindset, so therefore. It's not surprising to me that one of the prevention is what? Some spirituality or emotional health, which actually enables you to deal with life, right? Because everybody's life has challenges. There is no human being who does not have challenges in life. Okay? So now the whole key is not to avoid challenges. Okay? To deal with those challenges and to make them into not non-challenge. When you have certain clarity, and when you are proactive and you do what needs to be done, then you make that challenge into what? Something which is, you know, you use your free will to actually grow from it rather than being burdened by it.
A very nice way is to say that in every problem is an opportunity.
Absolutely, right? This is the way, if you look at, imagine you look at your life like that. You know, very implicit assumptions or implicit messages that we tell ourselves. Say that every event in my life is an opportunity for me to learn and to grow and to become more in aligned to realities and deal with every situation effectively. Imagine this is the message I give to my life. My life will naturally be what? You know, I will not have all these this loads implicit. It's not like people are constantly telling them, oh, life is bad. Nobody is doing that, right? But there is this heaviness that we all carry within us. Okay, so that heaviness goes away. Okay? And therefore, the person becomes naturally cheerful and naturally a light person. So this is what we call prashantatma. Okay? The second adjective which is used is vikatabhihi. Vikatabhi is bhaya. Bhaya means fear. Okay? So here the person has handled one's fears well. Okay? Because one of the heaviness that, one of the main causes of heaviness that we feel is what? All kinds of fear that we hold within ourselves. And in some ways, those fears are, they are loads, but at the same time, if you haven't got the spiritual vision, they are inevitable. Okay? Why is some amount of fear inevitable? Because nobody knows what the next moment is going to be. Really, nobody knows. Okay? There is a very nice story in Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, there is this King Parikshit, okay? And he goes to Shuka and he says that, I know I have only 7 days to go in my life. So you teach me that knowledge, right, which will help me to have a proper perspective to life, because I don't have much time. So therefore, 7 days I have. Okay? And he was feeling very sad because he knew that he had only 7 days. Shuka the sage told him, King Parikshit, you're lucky. He says, what? What are you saying that I'm lucky? Okay? I have only 7 days to go. He says, you at least know for sure you have 7 days to go. I don't even know if I'm going to exist next minute. Okay? So therefore, this is reality. The reality is you don't know how tomorrow is going to be. Okay? And therefore, right? So that means that causes fear, because what? The possibility is what? The things can turn out anyway. Okay? Not exactly as you had planned, as you want. So therefore, certain amount of fear is inevitable. Okay? If you live as an individual without the spiritual vision, you cannot get rid of fear. Okay? Now, what does spirituality do? People make all these promises that, oh, spirituality eliminates all fears and all. It is not true. You have to know exactly what spirituality does. What spirituality does is, first, gives you an understanding about 2 types of fear that we all have. One is what we call instinctual fear and the other one is psychological fear. Okay? Instinctual fear is something which is part of human programming. Okay? Human programming means it is a survival mechanism. Okay? You see a wild elephant if you're in the forest, okay? You will run. And that is something which is, why have you decided to run? Because your eyes have captured what? Elephant, and then it has sent data to your brain, and the brain immediately sends a signal that, hey, you better flee because your life is in danger. Okay? So this kind of fear is something that you cannot eliminate and you need not eliminate. Why? Because it gives you a certain, that's rational living. Okay? You are walking at night in New York City and you see this big tall man coming, right? And you have to you can't just say, oh, everything is one and everything is Ishvara. That is misguided kind of understanding, right? So therefore, you have to take precautions, right? And these precautions you take because there are some signals of fear. Signals of fear give you that knowledge that I have to make an action. Okay? So therefore, this fear, in fact, nobody can eliminate and nobody should eliminate. It is actually going against what? The
Survival.
order, yeah, the survival and order of your human brain. Okay? Now, that means that that fear is something which is there and you need to learn to manage it. Okay? Now, the second thing which is there, which you can to a greater extent deal with, and that is what we call psychological fears. Psychological fears are those for events which have not yet happened. Okay? You believe that they have happened, right? I mean, in your whole, you create a picture, okay, and you use your reasoning. If this is the case, then this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen, and then what? You are suffering and you believe in that whole story, which has not even yet happened, right? You have some logic that you have used. It's not like you're totally illogical, okay? But those inference steps, the steps of inference they are without any data, okay? Or if they have data, there is some very poor correlation. If it happened in the past, it is going to happen, there is no rule. So that means you're using false correlation. Okay? And then, not only that, you don't even realize it. Okay? So you start thinking that this is what is going to happen, and then you start what? Suffering from fears of things which don't even have exist. They don't even exist now, and they may not even exist in the future. And in your mind, what is the thing? Although it's already happened.
I have a lovely photo here that I was going to put, which says, worrying is using your imagination to create something you don't want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful. So true. Right? Worrying is absolutely. You use your imagination. First of all, you don't want it, but you use your imagination to what? To create the very thing that you don't want, and then you suffer from it. And it puts you in a mode of what? Helplessness, fears, all kinds of anxieties, stress, right? These are all created by, you have to understand they are created by you. They are not, you always think that they are created by situations. You always attribute to situations, but a lot of it is your own creation. And once you decide to deal with it, first you recognize the fact that, hey, the center is me. Okay? And you undo all these projections by understanding where you are projecting, where are your inferences which are faulty, correct them, right? Then a lot of your fears will actually begin to reduce. But emotional life has its own what? Its own length, right? So even if you start analyzing it and correcting all your assumptions and all, it's not that it is going to go from one moment to the other. There will be still some left over. Okay? So this is where Vigata Bihi, there the only that left over, Vedanta has a way to deal with. Okay? The only thing that you can do proactively about this time lag between what? When you make all the necessary steps to help yourself and actual result of actual change in your emotional life, right? What do you do in the time lag? There is one more tool you have, and that is what? Prayers. That is the only thing.
For psychological things.
Even for psychological things, right? So therefore, that prayer is, our teacher used to say, the highest expression of human free will. I used to wonder, what does it mean? He said that free will generally you use what? To make decisions, right? The decisions of what? So many things that you have to constantly do. Now, if you realize that in every decision that you make, from the time of the birth till now, there are so many unknown variables over which you have no control, and that is a fact, right? So if you, most of the time, we live in life thinking that what? As though I have control or I want to control. We don't realize the fact that there are unknown variables over which neither we have knowledge of those unknown variables nor we can control each one of them. Once you understand that, your decision is inherently fraught with limitations. And you still need to make the best possible decision to help yourself. Okay? In that case, what is it that you can do? A rational human being will identify known variables, okay, to the best of one's abilities, take proactive actions to take care of those known variables to get what one wants, and for the unknown variables, what can you do? The only thing you can do is pray. There is no other action. Think of another action you can do. There is no other action. Because by definition it is unknown. Okay? So therefore, in order to pray, you need to understand many things. First, that you don't have all the control, that wanting to control and illusion of control is big. It puts you on a mindset which is not objective. Okay? Recognizing the fact that you don't have all the control in the world is objective. Now, objective, then you may feel what? Helpless because you don't have control. So to get over that feeling of helplessness, you can use your free will to do one more act, right? That is what, which is a prayer. So that means you are proactive about what? Your helplessness. You are not just saying, oh my God, I'm helpless. That is a shift. That means you become proactive all the way. You do whatever you have to do, not only with reference to known variables, but also with reference to unknown variables. Okay, so this is what we call incorporating. Okay, now unknown variables, you need to understand one more thing. Okay, are these unknown variables just random, or they are organized what? By certain laws. They are organized by certain laws. The minute you understand that they are organized by certain laws, then again you have to go one step further. Okay? Are these laws just mechanical laws, like laws of gravity? Are they dumb laws? Okay? So this is where this whole understanding of Vedanta actually helps you to understand what is Ishvara. Ishvara is not one entity sitting up there ruling your life. Ishvara is that intelligence which what arranges the whole universe through series of laws. So therefore, you pray to whom? You pray to Ishvara, the one who organizes the universe, okay, in form of series of laws. Okay. Now, what you pray for, you also have to be careful, because once you understand Ishvara is all the laws are manifestation of that intelligence being which actually organizes the universe in a way that things are extremely intelligently put together. Okay. Now, so what is my scope of changing those laws? That also you must ask. Okay. Can I pray saying that, oh, the laws of gravity should change because I'm falling and you know what, I will fall and I will injure myself. While I'm falling, can I say, oh Ishvara, please change the laws of gravity for me so that what, I first of all don't fall, or I fall at a much slower speed so that what, I don't get hurt. Can you pray like that? No. Right? Because if you're interfering with the laws, right, you can't. That's a silly, and then you can say, oh, Ishvara did not listen to my prayer. That's silly. Okay, so where is that window? Where is that window that you can somehow intervene in the laws?
In the unknown variables.
Excellent, right? So that window is the unknown variables. Excellent, Sumi. Okay. Now those unknown variables which are going to decide what is going to happen in my life is what we call laws of karma. That is the window. Okay, that means my life is part of that intelligence, right? I'm not away from that intelligence. Okay, what's going to happen to me in future is not only a function of what all I do right now, but my life is connected to the past through unknown, which are unknown to me. But it is governed by the laws. Then you can pray, and you can have many specific types of prayers. Okay? There are different types of prayers that Vedas talk about. One is you can say, this is the outcome that I want in that given situation, and help me, right? When you have done that, what have you done? Your prayer is an action. The minute you have introduced one action to the existing set of actions, what have you done? You have changed the configuration of the result. Okay? Like I gave an example, H2O is water, H2O2 becomes hydrogen peroxide. Okay? You add one more variable, you change the configuration. Right? It cannot but be like that. Okay? Now whether the configuration changed exactly according to your like or not depends upon so many, how those variables are, which you don't know. But you have done your part. Okay? Now, there are people who say that yes, from now on I can be very conscious, but what about the past certain actions that I have done? Right? That I did not have awareness about, how things work, and I may have done things of which I have to undergo certain situations in life. Okay? So then there are specific prayers in the Vedic tradition, which is what we call Prayaschitta. Prayaschitta means actions which I may have done in the past, of which the consequences that I am undergoing. So that also you can actually use your free will to say, now this prayer is for that.
So this is why, like even in our religion, in Zoroastrianism, there are certain prayers for certain things.
Excellent. It's all targeted interventions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And one never really focuses on that. That, why should I on this day pray this, or if you're sick, pray
this particular.
Or even in the Muslims they have.
Yeah.
That 1 month is for penance, how we have in certain times you don't do this, and so each is meant, one is for the forefathers and
Then there is also a prayer which is what is going to help you in every circumstance, which is what Gayatri Mantra. Give me clarity of thinking. Right? Because clarity is something how the mind can go on a tangent without you even knowing it. Right? So this is that is another kind of a prayer. Okay? So that means you can help yourself to different kinds of prayers. And this is why he says, you can also help yourself to getting rid of your fears, your whole emotional life, the burdens that you are carrying. Because there is a time lag between you correct your thinking and the actual emotion that you feel. So you can also help yourself to say, I am feeling overwhelmed by my sorrows. I am feeling overwhelmed by my fears. I am feeling overwhelmed by my anger that I am holding within me. Acknowledge your emotional life. Nobody can bypass emotional life, and this is why what Roshni was saying is spiritual health and emotional health. They go hand in hand. There are no two things actually.
Because if you don't acknowledge the emotional, then you can't use it.
Then you can't. And in fact, you can't even become spiritual unless you acknowledge your emotional life. Okay? Most of the people try to bypass their emotional life through spirituality. Okay? Nobody can. This is why the Vedic spirituality includes both.
When you talk of prayer, it's not only specific formal prayers. I mean, if can one just say
Make up
what
your
one
own
thinks
absolutely,
of. Yeah.
absolutely.
So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't have to. It can be a format, a given prayer with a given format and whatever,
Right.
or it can be your own prayer,
Own prayer.
right? And that is what is meant by mat chittaha and mat paraha. Okay? What is this mat? Lord Krishna is not saying what? That you, unfortunately, if you don't understand Gita, people, use this mat chittaha and mat paraha means, oh, you only come to me, as though Lord Krishna is one person and saying that what? I will take away all your fears if you come to me. This is a very simplistic understanding.
I'm the
What-
one and only.
Exactly. Mat chittaha and mat paraha means you bring in your understanding in your whole emotional life, right? You bring in the understanding of Ishvara. That's why
What does mat mean?
Mat is me. But here me does not mean Lord Krishna me.
Means
It means
the entire entity.
exactly Ishvara. Bring the understanding of Ishvara in your helping yourself. Right? This is why, as I told you, a psychiatrist, after attending our retreat in Anekati this year, he said, I now know what is the value added of Gita that the modern psychology doesn't have. Okay? They have amazing tools. They are brilliant. Okay? But this whole dimension of what is the world? Is it random world or is it organized by something? What is the nature of the cause of the universe? That particular understanding is not available to them. So they can't have a basic understanding of the world as being fair or unfair or whatever. I mean, they just have to try to help themselves a little bit here and there. Okay? But here, this knowledge is available, and this knowledge is not vague knowledge. Because if it is vague knowledge, right, you can get into all these problems. Ishvara is sitting there, I'm asking so badly and all that, and he doesn't listen to me. These kind of problems can happen. So therefore, not only you need to understand, but you need to understand it correctly, so that you know what you are doing and why you are doing what you are doing. Okay? So therefore, in this whole getting well as an individual, bringing in the understanding of Ishvara is an essential part. You can't ignore Ishvara. Why can't you ignore Ishvara? Because right now, when you're listening to me, the billions of neurons in your brain are working so that you can comprehend. This is what we call laws of epistemology. Who has created that? That the sounds that I make create some meanings in your brain. Where? Did you and I create those laws? No. So we operate within those laws. The understanding of these laws has to be integral part of your decision making. If there is such a fundamental reality, and if you ignore it in your understanding, can you live a sane life? You can't. Okay? So, mat chittaha, mat means me. Thinking about me, but thinking about me not as, oh, this one Krishna, not that way, right? And mat paraha, the goal of life. Paraha means the goal of life is understanding realities. And understanding of realities will enable me to get rid of my own smallness and my own projections which lead to my suffering. So therefore, mat chittaha and mat paraha means in this whole program of becoming relatively sane, you need to include Ishvara and ask for help. Ishvara means you ask for help when you are helpless. Okay? So there he says, and brahmachari vrate sthitaha. What is brahmachari vrate sthitaha? Okay? Now the word brahmachari in the Vedic parlance, it's used in different ways. Okay? One is they talk about Brahmachari is talked about in a few different ways. Then first we will see what are the different ways, and then we'll see which one applies. Right? There is this whole Vedic vision which talks about different ashramas. It divides human life in 4 different stages. Yeah?
Sorry,
What
just
are
say
the-
that again.
Okay. The Vedic, everybody has one life, right? Now, in order to analyze life and life goal, okay, the Vedic vision divides everybody's life in 4 ashrama. Ashrama means 4 stages. Okay. The first stage is what we call brahmachari. Brahmachari is what you come into the world, and what do you need to do? You need to learn. You need to learn a lot of things, right? So that means this is the first stage of life. After having learned to the best of your abilities, then what you are ready to work, have children,
The
your
household,
start your own
yeah.
family. This is what we call grahastha. Okay. Then you have lived your life with many responsibilities, what jobs, looking after children, all the other things which come, social life, all that you have done which comes under grahastha. Okay. And even within that, how you live, right? If you accumulate, you share with others, all that comes in grahastha life. Okay. So what is your level of awareness when you are living? Okay. Then comes what we call vanaprastha. Okay. What is vanaprastha? Vanaprastha is, right, we all have, as I said, tendency to control things. Okay. So now this tendency to control, we cannot easily just give up. For example, okay, when in Grahastha ashram, when our kids are young, we need to give them the input because they are not equipped with proper decision making. Okay. So therefore, you need to be there. You need, because
You need to take control.
you need to, I would not say take control, but you have a role to play, a very significant role to play with reference to what? Forming the
Direction
character,
and-
yeah, exactly.
And
Giving the
boundaries.
directions, boundaries, values, the whole building a character of that child. Very active role one has to play. Okay. So therefore, I mean, imagine in some ways that the universe has entrusted you what? To bring up 2 human beings which are then going to be 2 or 4 or how many ever children you have, right? Who are going to what? Live in the world, and you have what? Been given a major role in what? Building, shaping that person, which is going to decide what is going to be the interaction in the universe. That's a huge thing. It's not a small responsibility. Okay. And one has to do it. One cannot live their kids with babysitter. If you brought human beings to this world, you have to look after them. Okay. So therefore, and that's by it no means any less important than going out and working. It's not. In fact, it's a huge thing. Build a human being is a huge thing. Okay. So therefore, this is what we call grahastha. Okay. But what happens is, imagine now the child is 24-year-old or 25-year-old, and you still want to continue making all the decisions for that person. Right?
She's doing a very vigorous. We have to hear Mayor's week. We really
So this is where the whole Vanaprastha walks in. He says, hey, in the life of that same role that you are playing, what? The demands of what is expected.
Relinquish control,
Yeah, exactly. Okay? If I keep telling people, because this is the biggest thing people suffer from, right? The biggest problem is a child don't tell us, don't follow what we say. In that very sentence, I can see that the problem does not belong to the child.
The answers in this question.
Exactly. The answer is in the question. So therefore, that you feel that the child, it is in the best interest of the child, then the child follows everything that you say. There is a huge fallacy there. Because you yourself have no very little. That is the reality. And your perspectives are also totally skewed, or everybody's perspective, right? Then you think that because you have a certain control over the child, because of that relationship, you are actually abusing that relationship to what? Most of the time, their unmet dreams, what?
They want to
Yes.
They want to
Realize.
realize through their children. Okay? So that means you are putting so much pressure on that child. So this is why Vanaprastha, look at this whole Vedic vision of life. There is a time that you have to get involved, and it is extremely critical that you get involved. You can't be indifferent. Okay? But there is a time, right? If you want to teach their children something, teach them how to make decisions. If you teach them how to make decisions, then let them make decisions and learn. Because there is no decision which is a perfect decision, because every decision is fraught with unknown variables. You recognize that. Then show them how to recognize the known variables, how to make efforts towards known variables, what to do for unknown variables. All this you need to analyze and show them. This will give them skill to live their life and make effective decisions. Once you give them that tool, then what? You have to let them make decisions. Okay? This is what we call what? Intelligent withdrawal. Very intelligent. Then you can say, I'm always available to you. Whenever you need me, I'm there. If you want to know my perspective, I'm always there to tell you. But I have confidence that with whatever you have learned and whatever I have imparted, whatever skills I have imparted, you are capable of making right choices. Tell that child that. Imagine a child is told by the parent that I have confidence in you, rather than telling you should do what I tell you to do. That's a different child altogether. It's a different child. Okay. So this is where Vanaprastha. Look at, the Vedic vision is,
It was century application.
yeah, it is amazing.
The other way in which it was explained when I read it earlier was that you're born, you get to use the earth's resources to learn. Then in Grihastha Ashram, you get to use those resources. And then unless you withdraw and let the next generation use them, because it's not
Infinitely.
it's not infinite.
Yeah.
So then you have to use less and let them use more. And so you withdraw even from the material, from all sides.
See, here a lot of it is our own kind of emotional
This was
attachment.
just
This
That
is
point, that
yeah.
must be the
that
perspective.
must be
Yeah,
the
perspective.
perspective.
Yeah. But here what we are talking about is that
You relinquish control even of the your house, the enjoyment, and let them be in the forefront.
yeah. So that in fact what it is a time, according to the traditional Vedic times, it's a time for reflection. Time for reflection as to, I have been so busy with my life, I've accomplished so many things, right? What exactly I have achieved and what is it which is still not achieved? That's a reflection. So therefore, here it's all with reference to, once you recognize that in all the achievements that you have gained, okay, has still there is still something which needs to be addressed. Okay, so this is what, once you recognize that time of reflection that you have, the time of letting go control, emotional control, okay, and reflecting upon yourself and your own life, will then what? The fourth stage of life is What is sannyasa? Sannyasa is generally, it is put as renouncing everything else. Okay? Here, in the Vedic vision, the whole thing is totally different. It is spending time for your moksha. Right? It's you and your fulfillment. Moksha means freedom. Okay? Looking at life experiences, seeing how life has progressed, seeing the fact that everything that I have achieved has still not given me what I really want, then you go for it, right? That is what we call sannyasa. Because now whole life has been going and living with the world. Now the time has come to reflect about who you are. What is the purpose of your being here? What have you learned from all the experiences that you have gone through? Okay, so that is what we call sannyasa. This is what is the program of life. Okay, so that means, according to the Vedic vision, a human being is a spiritual being. Okay? There is no human who can live one's life, right, fully contented if the person has not asked some basic questions. Who am I? Why am I here on this earth? What is the purpose of life? These are such basic and fundamental questions. If you have not asked and if you have not addressed those questions, all the things that you have done, you've been so busy in life, doing so many things, okay? You have not put your life in perspective. Okay? So this is why what Vedic vision is, you can do everything, but you can't ignore this. Okay? Once you have this, everything else also becomes meaningful. We are not asking you to give up everything else. It gets its own slot, its own place. Okay? So this is what we call the 4 ashramas of life. Okay? The second meaning of brahmachari is if there is what we call naishtika brahmachari. That is the person who, it's not that one has to go through all these different stages. There are people who are very young and they recognize that they want to study this spiritual knowledge. When we go to this, our place where we studied, some people are in their 20s, 25, right? And immediately they don't at all become people who are grahasthas. They just move what we call, they remain brahmacharis for a length of time, and after that they skip 2 steps. Which are the 2 steps? Grihastha and Vanaprastha, and they become sannyasis. This is another model that is available. Okay. Now here, when he is talking about it, he is not talking about it in the sense of lifestyle. Brahmachari does not mean that you have to become brahmachari. Okay. What it means is, what is a person who recognizes, okay, moksha is the end. If moksha is the end of my life, when moksha involves self-knowledge and preparing oneself for that self-knowledge, okay, what is an essential thing to do to gain that self-knowledge? How do you prepare yourself? You need to have certain mastery over your senses. That is something which is necessary. Okay? What does mastery over senses mean? It does not mean that you have to stay away from everything. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that you have to put all your other pursuits in perspective. Mastery means that what? Let's look at our relationship with simple thing like eating. How many times a day you do this act of eating? 3 times and mostly 4 or 5 times. Very good, Bela. Right? Now, in that, right, shows a lot of your psychology. In how you eat and what you consume and what is your attitude, it shows, it's a reflection of your psychology.
You are what you eat.
Now,
How you eat.
It's interesting. Let's analyze it. Okay? Let's analyze how, right? The first thing is, there are 2 orientations. In fact, the first time I went to the US, it was like a big thing for me, because what was striking for me was the relationship that people have with food. In India, at least when I was growing up, people enjoy eating. They enjoyed eating, right? Whatever, anytime there was something nice, everybody would just come and eat, and sweets people love to eat, and there's so much enjoyment there. And there for the first time, it was the minute, especially women, right? They are sitting, and the whole thing is, how many calories am I consuming? Will I get fat?
Well, this is not good for me.
Or
or
this is,
not, yeah.
So that means from this act of enjoyment is all these, these pressures and burdens of, then, I have to go to the gym right after so that I can take off this calorie. There is such an I'm not saying that one need not be careful about what one eats, but that enjoyment is something which is beautiful. Okay? While you're having a proper relationship with food is very, very necessary, because the food is meant for your nourishment. Okay? Without food, you cannot, have, in the food are all the essential vitamins, proteins, minerals, everything that you need. You need to recognize that.